Good morning, everyone. Good morning to everyone. I have 6 people in attendance. So I gave a 5-minute, just like a little grace time for those who have not logged in. But I am going to actually start class. All right, we have 7 people right now. Okay. Okay, so good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, miss.
I will call your name and we'll do a little roll. You just tell me, let me know if you could hear me and that you can see my screen. That's very important for me to know. All right, so Alia Baru.
Yeah, my son, yes, I can hear you and see your screen.
Isilia.
Yeah, miss, and yes, I could see your screen.
Giovanni.
Yeah, miss, and yes, I could see your screen.
Kedral.
Yeah, miss, I can see.
Sharda.
Yeah, miss, I can see your screen.
Shanice.
Yeah, miss, I can see your screen.
And Sharice Pate.
Yeah, miss, I could see your screen.
All right, quite a number still absent. So I believe those would have been the students who had a clash. There are some students saying that they had another subject which they are weaker in. So that is why I'm recording today's session, okay? And if you need the link afterwards, after the session, you could just message me and I will email it to you. Now, this session is 8 hours long. Of course, we're not going to sit at our desk for 8 hours. We will have an hour lunch. We will go on lunch around 12. We will have a break time around 10 o'clock and then an afternoon break around 2:30, 3 o'clock. All right. So it's important during the break time, you just take yourself away from that space that you created for your crash course. You walk around, you get some water, you get a cup of tea, coffee, what have you, because I don't want you getting too, have that feeling you're feeling really tired behind the screen. That can happen. So welcome to the crash course. Welcome to those who I have not taught personally. My name is Miss Bahau, and today we are going through topics I will give you. Now, I just want to make sure everyone is on the Google Classroom. I send the class codes. I do hope that you add it. So far, I already posted one document, which is basically like a little guide. So I'll just show you. All right, can you all see it like a scheme of work on the screen?
Yes, miss.
Right, so that scheme of work is just to show you like the structure of the exam, the percentage of each paper, the various sections, just a little guide like a book you could use, which you should have already, and the topic. So like each topic, I have the subheadings that you should know. So it's very important to go through this like a little checklist. Use it like a little guide to make sure you have every information. You have completed every single topic here. Now, I just want to mention, even though you all would have seen CXC post up the topics for your paper 2, it's recommended that you learn the syllabus because of your paper 1. They are going to test you on every single topic on the paper 1. All right. So
Miss, I didn't see the one for integrated science.
you didn't see which one? The
What
topics?
CXC posted up? Yeah.
Yeah, I have it. I will share it with you. All right.
Okay.
So don't worry. Each material that I use, I am also going to post it on the classroom. Now the drive is where I have all the past papers, the paper 1 and the paper 2 stored. So that is the folder you're going to use for your practice when you're doing your past paper practice. If you're not added to the drive, you could let me know. I believe Shanice, you had mentioned you didn't get the link, but I did add it, so you could always give me some feedback.
Okay.
All right, so even the PowerPoint that I'm using will be posted as well. So let's begin. All right, so I'm going to full screen. Can everyone see in full screen mode right now?
Yeah.
Yes, miss.
All right, so this is a little guide that I created. I have a little quote here. All right, so don't think about what can happen in a month. Don't think about what can happen in a year. Just focus on the 24 hours in front of you and do what you can to get closer to where you want to be. So even though exams were pushed back, a lot of people feel as though, okay, they have a lot of time, but each day you should have like a little list of what you want to complete for that particular day. So you say to yourself, each day I have a certain goal. I have, okay, I want, like today you're doing integrated science. Some days you might split it into 2 subjects, what have you, but always use your time wisely because each day counts and you don't want to look back on the day that you probably wasted time and regret it, because after your exam, you are going to realize you have so much days, so much time in your hands that you might not even know what to do with that time. And it's always important to take a day for yourself as well. Take an hour, take whatever time, all right? Of course, not an exceedingly long break, but it's important to take some time for yourself. Now, what we have in store today, I'm going through some exam tips and advice very quickly, review of the broad topics. We are going to practice the paper 2s as well as the paper 1s. All right, just to remind you of the dates, because everyone would have seen the timetable. Your paper 1 is June the 17th, your paper 2 is June the 13th, and for those who are doing a paper 3 is June the 16th. Is there anyone here doing the paper 3? Well, I know Shanice is. All right, so everyone else is doing so everyone here would have done the SB, the lab component and submitted their labs already. And for those who I have done labs with, yes, your labs, your marks were posted, everything was on time. All right, so that would have been casual. Well, Gabriella and Gabby is not here. Gabriella and Gabriel not here right now, as well as Aliyah. All right, in case you were wondering. Now, the breakdown of the integrated science syllabus is broken down into 3 areas. Your section A deals with the organism and its environment. So you look a lot about the body systems, what is cells, what is matter. Section B has to do with home and the workspace. So basically like temperature, ventilation, energy, those will fall under section B. Section C is Earth's place in the universe. So that had a lot to do with the terrestrial and aquatic environment. All right, and I saw water and the aquatic environment is something that is coming. The format of the exam comprised of, well, your paper 1 is 60 multiple choice. You have a 115 minute. A lot of people memorize the answers. I do want to inform you, they do change up the wording. They do change up the options sometimes, and that could change the entire answer. So you have to be very careful with those. Yes, integrated science have, I would say, one of the subjects that have the most repeated multiple choice. All right, but please use every minute of that exam. Don't just rush it in 30 minutes and you walk out the door. All right, because you saw the entire paper was repeats. Stay in and make sure that each answer is correct, and you make sure that you are totally like satisfied with your answers before you leave. Your paper 2, now look out for your question 1. It always involves like some kind of practical or investigative question where you have to maybe plot a graph, sometimes they give you a graph and you have to answer questions. There are some lab-related questions here. Then you have 3 structured questions. Structured would be like your short answer types. So you have like your 2-mark question, 3-mark questions, which is easy to gain marks here. And this is where a lot of students lose marks, the 2 essay type. They also refer to it as the extended response questions. So you have a long page of lines where you have to answer. And some people, they give really bare answers and they lose marks there. So I will show you all how to plan for this. All right, and your paper 2 is for 2 hours and 30 minutes, which is really, you have a good time frame to work here. All right, so how to answer multiple choice questions? You basically have to do as many practice as possible. So when you go into the drive, you would see I have from very old papers. You're going to see from 1999. I think the most latest one, I have 1991. But always at this time frame that you are in, you want to start from the earliest. So you want to start from like 2019, 2018 and going. So your most recent, go back. That is what you should be doing. But if you have started like from September with your past papers, then you could have started like from the old set and you keep working your way to the recent ones. If you notice, I also have additional multiple choice, which came from a textbook. It's not CXC's questions. It's a little more challenging than CXC. But if you just want to just do one particular topic, you can just click on the topic and it's a good way to test your memory on the topic. All right, so always read the instructions on the exam paper. When they give you the multiple choice, well, the paper 1, you go through your instructions and remember you have your answer sheet. Everything on the answer sheet, please remember, is only on pencil. You'll have to fill out your candidate number. And when you are shading your options, make sure your circle is entirely shaded because the way they mark the multiple choice is through a machine. So there are many times people would shade very, very light and it won't pick up and they will just get it wrong. Or sometimes there will be like pen ink on that paper and it's discarded. So just be careful with that for the multiple choice answer sheet. Always answer every question, even though you don't even know the answer for a question. Just put an answer. Each question should just take over a minute because it's 60 multiple choice. So if it's a minute a question, that's an hour. And then you have your 15 minutes to check over. Some people just finish the entire question paper and then check over within 15 minutes. Or some people at the end of each question, you check over one time, which I do suggest because sometimes you can finish the entire paper and when you start back, because of that laziness, that kind of, you're tired from the exam, your brain get a little tired, you might go and change an answer. You might change something that you had correct into something wrong. All right, so that's based on what you prefer there. Give yourself time to check your work, but don't change answers until you have thought carefully. All right. Erase any errors completely, then choose your new answer. So if it is, let's say you had your initial multiple choice shaded and you erase it, but it wasn't erased clean, and you put your new answer, sometimes if there's 2 answers on the paper, it is automatically wrong, even though you had the right one. All right, only leave one answer space shaded deeply. Try to avoid the push point pencils for your multiple choice. Work with your regular Faber-Castell bold points for these multiple choice. The process of elimination. So when you're doing your multiple choice, remember it's 4 options. There's always 2 that are totally wrong, and then there's 2 that it can be challenging to figure out because it's close or it seems correct. So when you read over the question and you battle out the 2 that you're left with, now you eliminate the ones that are wrong first, and then you just have the 2 options where you're going to go back in theory, go back to how the question is formatted, the words that were used, and then you will choose the best answer there, right? There's the process of elimination. Now, these are some multiple choice questions which have caught a lot of students. So when you look at this first one, they said the formation of urea occurs in the, and you have your options, pancreas, liver, kidney, bladder. Now, automatically, when somebody just see the word urea, they just associate it with the kidney, all right? And it's important to go back and read the question, because if they had said that, like for instance, they say which organ gets rid of urea, then kidney would have been the answer. But when you look at the word formation, they are asking where urea is even, where is it made? So that is completely different. The organ that makes urea is actually the liver. So if the liver makes it, then this would have been the answer. So you just have to be careful with the wording. Sometimes with exam nerves, exam anxiety, you might just see urea and then automatically you go and shade kidney. All right, I've seen it happen. All right, let's look at this one. Which part of the blood produces antibodies against certain bacteria? So when you hear parts of the blood, you know, red blood cell, plasma, phagocyte, all of those are parts of the blood. But when it comes to your pathogens, you're only thinking about your white blood cells. So you automatically will eliminate red blood cell and plasma. Now you're left with these two, and sometimes with all of the information and all of the time is spent, you will just sit down and try to really remember which one between these two is produce antibodies. So you have to go back in theory, go back in your memory, use your brain and really sit down and think of it. Look at the words, phago. And the words you could associate it with other simple terms. Like phago is to swallow, lymph, you think of like the lymphatic system. And you would remember that this is the white blood cell that actually produces the antibodies. All right, so this is an example of one where you're going to have two answers that you have to kind of like battle in your mind to figure out which is the correct one. This is the tricky one here. So if you look at question 3, you will notice our word is in capital letters. All right, there are many multiple choice you're going to see like this. They usually have the word best, no, except, most likely, least likely. Those are words they tend to use in capital letters for a reason. And that is because it is tricky. A lot of people fall for it. So especially this one. When they are saying which of the following is the best definition, that means all the definitions are correct. So you have to now locate the one that is best suited, well, for the molar tooth, the best definition of the molar tooth. So when you read through the options and you realize everything is true, you have to sit down and figure out which one is the best one, which one really differentiates the molar tooth from the other set of teeth. So when you read A, you see that it is used to grind food, right? The molar, yes, you crush and grind your food. You also see it is near the back of the mouth. That is also true. It has more than one root. That's true. And it is never replaced. So all are correct, but the only one here that could differentiate the molar from the premolar and, well, whatever other teeth, canine, incisor, but really the molar and premolar is best suited for these options here. You go back in your theory and you say to yourself, okay, you have learned that there are two sets of teeth. You have your milk set of teeth and you have your permanent set of teeth. The one that is never replaced is actually the molar. All right, premolars, they tend to, they are replaced. So it will drop and then you'll get your new set of permanent teeth. But the molar, it is never replaced. So therefore, the best answer here, or the best definition of the molar would have been D, it is never replaced. All right, so look out for questions like these. All right. Now, I just want to make it clear, if you have any questions, anything you didn't hear correctly, you want me to go over, you could always unmute yourself, let me know. Okay, so we're moving on to the tips on how to answer structured questions. So the structured, remember, that will be a section A of your paper 2. So those are the short answers. Now, if you are not sure of the right answer, use any help you are given by first reading carefully all parts of the question. Some questions join, there's like a question that's in one sentence, but it's 2 parts. So always break up your questions by reading it over. Maybe you could underline in pencil so that what you lay in your paper, in your answers, you are making sure you have every part completed. Also, as a rough guide, make 1 point or write 1 sentence for each mark available. So sometimes you would see, like, they would tell you to explain something, describe a particular process. And if you see it's 3 marks, you try to have, like, you use that as a guide. Like, if something is worth 3 marks, then I should have 3 points, 3 different points. And it's good to have simple sentences that have each point in it. Don't combine 2 points in 1 sentence. All right, because sometimes people, when they do so, they may be repeating the same point twice. So always separate it. Check to see if you are clear where to put each part of your answer and don't repeat yourself. This is something people do a lot. They will be rambling and writing long answers, and somewhere along the line, they are saying the same thing, where they feel as though the more they write, the more marks they get. But that's not true. Simple sentences go a longer way, right? And here are some important terms and their meanings. So in questions, you're going to see words like compare. Compare means to state similarities and the differences. When you have to compare animal and a plant cell, don't just put the differences. You could also say what both have in common or how are they similar. So compare means both similarity and differences. Define means to state concisely the accurate meaning of a word or phrase. So you are basically given a definition or explaining what a concept means. Some people just memorize these. Some people could put it in their own words, which is excellent. You'll remember it better. And when you're defining something, try to avoid using back the word. Like, for instance, like if you have to explain what is diffusion, some people might say diffusion is when gases diffuse from an area. So avoid using back the word, say something else. All right, so describe is to give detailed factual information. And these go for a lot of marks. Describe, discuss, and explain, these 3. So when you describe something, you have to use point by point, and you kind of make it 1 point, roll over to the next point, but in an orderly fashion. Some people, when they mix up the points, they will leave out something. So you have to really know your topic, understand the theory, so that you have enough information for your described kind of questions. As much as you remember, and you could plan your answer before you start writing. All right, you could always ask the examiner for extra paper, and on that paper you could use as a little guide on how to answer or describe, discuss, and explain questions. Discuss means to give a reason, argument of the points for and against a certain case. So when you're discussing something, it's 2 ways you're looking at it. You're either discussing for the particular argument or for the particular situation, and you're also discussing against it. So you're looking at both sides, the pros and the cons, in other words. Explain means to give reasons for something, usually based on previous knowledge. So oftentimes when you see a question saying to explain something, You could give like a example. So when you give your explanation, you support it with an actual example. All right, or even something that relates to everyday life or something that you have learned previously. All right, so here are some other terms. You have interpret, name, outline, state, suggest. These are very simple because interpret just means to explain the meaning and the significance of it. When you're naming something, you just listen, you just put the name. There's no details required. Outline, very similar. You give a brief information on the most important step or points, often numbered. So if they tell you to outline a experiment, brief information, step by step, right? You number it. You're not going to explain each step or anything like that. State, give factual information in a brief way, no details or explanation. So if they say state 3 types of water pollution, you just say, okay, or sorry, 3 sources of water pollution. It could say like oil spills and fertilizer and what else you could say? You could say like solid waste that enters the water, right? Nothing too lengthy, very brief. Suggest means to offer a reasonable explanation for an observation based on previous knowledge or using information provided. So this one have a little more writing other than these. Suggest. So when you're suggesting something, you're explaining it based on the question, based on the observation, and you're also providing an example or previous knowledge that you have gained about the particular topic. All right, so always look out for these words. These words serve as a little guide or a clue on what is required in your answer, how your answer should be formatted. Right, now this is where the extended or the essay type question comes in, how to answer it. So when I said to ask the examiner for an extra page, this is where you're going to kind of plan your answers. You don't necessarily have to. Some people just do it in their own head. They don't need to write it. Some people need a little scrap page to help. All right, let me just make sure everyone is here. Right, okay. So when you're answering these questions, first, you interpret the question. Interpret has to do with you're reading it about 2 to 3 times. Then you understand any term. So you probably want to underline the word, explain, whatever the key word is, the how the question begins. Then you plan your answer. So you want to have your answers structured maybe in a paragraph form. You kind of indent away from the margin, or each point you skip a line, and or each paragraph, sorry, you skip a line. So when you plan your answer, you can have like a concept map of what you want to say, what is the points you want to have. So you kind of like make like a little writing about what the question is based on, what are the points you want, so that you have everything included. So you make your notes, and then from each point, then you start writing your answer. So a lot of people, when they read a question, automatically they just pick up the pen and they just start to write like a robot, right? And that is what's going to lead to problems. That is what's going to lead to leaving out points, not earning marks. And when you plan the answer, you are able to properly explain it, because you don't have a guide on what you want to say. It's just to lay it out on a paper. When you just start writing, you're still kind of brainstorming on what next you have to talk about, and then somehow while you're writing, you will just forget about it. All right, it happens. So don't be afraid. You can put your hand up and ask them for extra page. Of course, you can't go and work with your folder page in the exam. You can't work with any scrap page or anything like that, okay? You'll have to use their paper if you want to do it like this. All right, so I just noticed Robert. Robert, are you able to see my screen? You make sure and unmute yourself just to let me know you could see and hear. Now, I know it's Sunday. Some people still have that attitude to wake up late on a Sunday. They feel as, automatically when you hear Sunday, you just want to take it easy. It's a slow day. I know it's tough, to have an entire crash course on a Sunday. But remember, at this point in time, your regular routine will have to kind of change in a way that you are now an exam student, and that's like your primary goal. Conquer your exams, and then you will go back into your old routine. You could take you could sleep as long as you want, but at least you put in all the time and effort at this point in time. All right, so let's continue with the advice. Don't try to write more than can easily fit in the space. Sometimes when they give you the lines, that is all that is required. You don't have to write above and beyond that space. All right. Of course, if you make a mistake and you run out of space, there's the extra page where you just refer the question number and you put your answer on that extra page. If you don't have to write, if you don't have much to write, check the question to make sure you understood it. Some people, even when they're flipping back in the paper itself, there are little clues they get to help them with that particular question. Especially with multiple choice. Sometimes when you go back to like an old question, sometimes some of the way in which some of the questions are, you get like a little theory to kind of help you with something that you may be stuck on. You have just over a minute to write an answer for each mark, so you don't need to think and work quickly. Some people is be thinking that time just go in, but when you really sit down and you really, contain yourself, you take your deep breaths, you plan out your answers, you'll realize you have the time. All right, so don't feel like you're just speed writing and you have the time is just going. Because when you realize you finish and you put your pen on the paper and you probably watch your watch, you might see you have a whole hour again. All right, so don't feel pressured into writing speedily during the exam. You have to answer all the questions. Remember, don't leave out any. If you miss out any question, then it can't cut down on the score. Some people, they start from the back and work their way up. Some people start from the middle. However, sometimes the topic that they're really good at, they start at that particular question. But always flip through each page and make sure you answer every single thing. If there's a question you're stuck on, put an asterisk and just come back to it. All right. Okay, so here are the topics. You don't need to write it down because remember this will be posted. So we will basically focus on these. Now, like I said, CXC gave you the topics. So this is something they started just from the pandemic itself. They started giving topics. Robert, your mic is unmuted right now. Could you hear me? Could you see my screen? I'm actually hearing a lot of feedback from your side. All right. So as I was saying, these topics were given. It doesn't mean that it coming in this order. Like question 1 is on health, question 2. When I checked the last set of exam, it tend to run almost identical, but there were little things like, for instance, you notice these, you have up to 7, but it's really 6 questions. So you will notice that this particular one, it will come in 1 question, or some of these, it might see it like joined together in a question. So don't learn it like in this particular order. Just make sure you understand everything here. You covered every single thing in the topic. And these are broad topics. Each topic has subtopics, which so you want to make sure you have everything covered for each topic and also the entire syllabus for your paper too. So they are bringing a lot of section B and section C. All right, they are not bringing anything from section A here, which is the body systems. You're going to see health and sanitation, electricity and lighting, conservation of energy, metals and non-metals, terrestrial environment, water and the aquatic environment, fossil fuels and alternative sources of energy, which is very, very doable. All right, these topics are not difficult at all. They actually brought the easier set of topics, especially the first one. The paper 3 people, well, they have the food and nutrition part. So we'll have like a little lab. So go through the food test. Go through your Benedict's test, your starch test, your fats, protein test, right? Go through the steps. And then you have something on terrestrial environment. All right, so let's start health and sanitation. Let me just make sure we have nobody in the waiting list. Right, Robert, I saw your message. Right, yes, you cannot logged in late. So my advice to you, message me after the session so you could get a link to the video so you could see what you missed. All right, so health and sanitation. This is a little concept map of everything you should know in this particular topic. All right, so it has a lot to do with hygiene. Hygiene is basically broken into 2 parts. You have personal hygiene, so that will be like your own body. That would be like your oral hygiene, your skin hygiene, genital hygiene, everything about the human body, your personal hygiene, and then you have community hygiene. Now, personal will also fall like keeping your home surrounding clean, keeping your laundry clean, and those things as well. Community has to do with keeping your surrounding environment. So that would be like hold on, Right. Sometimes I fall victim to this phone thing. Not for leisure. Sometimes parents and students will message all kind of times. All right. As I was saying, and what I should have said in the beginning, try to keep your phone away and try to have screen timeouts for your apps. I would also recommend to come off. I wouldn't say deactivate your accounts, your social media, or what have you, but you can remove it from your phone from now till June. All right, because those suck up a lot of your time. When you actually have your screen time on, it is show like you're spending hours on these apps, and it's just a waste. It's really a waste. So just to be mindful of that. Yes, community hygiene, what I was saying is that this is keeping the surroundings, so your home surroundings as well as your community. So like your street, your neighborhood, that is making sure it's not polluted, you're following the guidelines, using the bins, all right? So that would be like waste management, how you get rid of waste. And there are several ways. You have like the compost heap. Compost heap is used for biodegradable materials such as vegetable waste, food waste, you know, things from the kitchen. You put it into a little heap. You have like a little box or a little wooden structure where you store that waste, and you basically have that in one, so it separates. Then you have, well, your solid waste where you have your like your plastic, your glass. You could sort them and you could recycle what could be. You could reuse. You could perform the 3 R's: reduce, recycle, and reduce. Also, when you're taking the solid waste, you want to ensure that when you place it into the garbage bags, it is closed, it is sealed, and it is placed basically, well, you may have like an outdoor bin. Some people have those outdoor bins. Some people have to take the trash outside of the community. But you want to ensure that everything is secured tightly. All right? And well, from there, it will reach the landfill. A landfill is basically a large area of land which is designated and governed. So it's regulated by the government. And that is where they store a lot of the solid waste. So that the garbage truck will take it there. Now, when you get rid of waste correctly, it is going to prevent disease. Also, when you sanitize your surroundings and keep your body sanitized, it is also going to prevent disease. So that is why it's important to understand hygiene. That is all about preventing disease, because when you have a buildup of waste or you have unpleasant odors in the skin, a lot of oils being produced in your underarms, in your hair, it is going to attract what you call pathogens. And pathogens are what has caused disease and can cause an outbreak. So you could have like a bacterial infection, you could have a viral infection, fungus. So you think of those pathogens and think of the diseases that they cause. So once you sanitize properly, whether it be personally, community level, it will eradicate those diseases. All right, so the other part for health and sanitation would have been to control the pests and parasites. When you're controlling pests, now pests could be like something household, so it could be like mosquitoes, the fly, rats. Parasites tend to be small organisms that live on an animal or human. It could live on the person's body, like their, let's say, the scalp, like lice, or it could live within the person, like ringworm or tapeworm. Those are parasites. So they also cause a lot of health problems. They can also spread disease as well. So the only one that you have to really learn entirely is the mosquito. So within the mosquito, you have to learn the cycle of the mosquito, which often starts with the adult, which will lay the eggs in the water. The eggs will take like 2 days to hatch into the larva. The larva will take a few days to turn into the pupa, and then it repeats. All right, and then you have your food, how to preserve food. Once you preserve food properly, you also eradicate the spread of pathogens that can cause foodborne diseases or even waterborne illnesses. So remember, with your foods, you have to cook it thoroughly. You have to make sure you wash the meats properly. Use lemon, use vinegar. There are certain chemicals you use when you are preparing foods. You want to use some acid. You want to use an alkaline kind of agent as well that will kind of stop the pathogens from multiplying. So you're basically creating an environment that they can't survive in. And that would be like using refrigerators, using microwaves. A lot of techniques that are used in the food industry will be like pickling, using salt, using ultra heat treatment, like for instance, when you're making milk. Pasteurization is another one for milk. And you also have like preserving mediums, like using vinegar and these kind of things. All right, so that is basically health and sanitation. I pulled this question here for you I want you to write. I want you to be participating. It's not advised to go back to your notes. I want you to write your answers on. So you should probably have like folder pages ready, a book ready. And I want you to set up health and sanitation, and you're going to do this question. Everyone see any question? Right, this is a past paper question, question 5. And I want to hear the answers that you will come up with. So very quickly in your book, just jot down something, read it thoroughly, and we'll go through it together. All right, so for number 5, part A, some characteristics of pests and parasites are described in table 2. Part 1, complete table 2 by writing the description for parasites. So Aliyah, what you have for the first one?
Miss, I'm not finished as yet.
All right, we're working with some time today. Remember, today is a very in-depth class. Anyone finish?
Miss,
Yes, miss.
Shanice, I think I heard this. Yes, go ahead. You could answer the first one.
Parasites live in organisms, and parasites depend directly on other organisms for food.
Very good. So for type of habitat, for parasites, remember pest is something that live near to other organisms. Parasites live in or on other organisms. So you just put in or on. In terms of how they obtain food, pests do not depend directly on the other organism for food. So pests don't feed on, like a cockroach won't feed off a animal or a host, whatever, human, but they will basically feed off like leftover foods. They will go into the garbage, those kind of things. Parasites tend to depend directly on the other organism for food. So mosquitoes will inject their needle-like mouths into you for blood. Flies tend to, well, not flies. Flies is more like pests. What is another parasite, and what do they depend on you for?
Ticks and leeches.
Ticks and leeches, so they will depend on your blood. The tapeworm, they actually feed off all the food nutrients. So when you digest in your meal, they are actually feeding off that glucose and proteins from your food. All right, remember they are found. Yeah.
Ringworms are alive.
Yeah, ringworms are organisms. That is basically feeding off your skin tissue, causing that
Oh,
kind of reddish.
I used to have some really bad, but you know they're alive.
Yeah, those are alive. Those are microorganisms. All right. Part 2, name 2 common household pests. So you can have a variety of answers here. What are some answers you all came up with? Isilia,
Miss cockroaches and ants.
cockroaches, ants, right? Mosquitoes, household flies, rats. All right. All right, so this is another part to the same question. Read it thoroughly again. Remember, these are short answers, so it shouldn't take you long. 2 marks, 1 mark, 2 mark, you just put in the answer. Okay, so for part B, the members of a rural community situated near a small river practice kitchen gardening, livestock rearing, and fishing. After experiencing an increase in the number of flies, ants, and other insects in their environment, they spray both inside and outside of their homes with a new insecticide advertised. So the advertisement is insect doom eradicates all insect pests in the home and the garden but does not kill your plants. Caution, do not apply to plants in bloom. So part one. Suggest two factors that might be responsible for the increase in the number of flies in the rural community. So this is based off the question itself. You have to look at the words and look at the reasons for the increase in flies. So when you look at the community, it's situated near a small river. They practice kitchen gardening, livestock rearing, and fishing. Now, these two in particular, livestock rearing, remember livestock would be, it could be chicken, it could be cow, goats, and that alone is going to have a lot of flies. Anytime there's animals, there will be flies because of their waste. Fish as well. Fish is a very fresh scent that attracts flies from very far, and those would be the two factors here. The waste from the livestock and the waste from the, and you could also say the kitchen waste as well. All right, so any other answers that you have, remember you have to only look at the particular question here. All right, based on this community. Anything else that you all saw? All right. Yes.
Yes, I say improper disposal of waste products or keeping the area of livestock untidy.
Right, the improper disposal of waste. And remember, you have to say from the kitchen, something to do with this community here. Part 2. In addition to using insecticides, suggest one other method which the residents could use to control the number of flies. So, simple things like covering the bin, discarding the garbage correctly, making sure the bag is tied securely. That will actually eliminate the flies because they can't enter. All right, what else do you all have here?
Disposal of organic waste properly.
Disposal of organic waste properly.
Yes, I say they could keep the environment clean.
All right, but you want to relate it to the flies, how you just control flies. When you say keep the environment clean, that could mean a whole set of things. That could mean to keep it free from all kind of other organisms. But for flies, say things like cover the bin, close the garbage bag tightly, make sure, you know, the pots are covered in the kitchen. Those things attract flies. So think of what is attract fly and what you will personally do to prevent it from coming in. And once you prevent it from coming in, you control the amount that there is. Some people is mix breeze and water, like after they have fish, like those fishermen, when they have that scent, they kill the scent with the breeze water. All right. C. The gardeners in the community observed that there is a decrease in the number of okras, which is okra, tomatoes, and peppers produced in their gardens, despite the formation of a large number of blossoms by the plants. There is also a decrease in the fish population in the river. How could spraying of the new insecticide be responsible for it? Well, and have two parts. Part 1, the decrease in produce from the garden. Now for C, part 1, remember with the insecticide, it harms the bloom. They said that. Caution, do not apply to plants in bloom. That means plants that are flowering. So the insecticide will harm the bloom, which is the plant's flowers, like the young flower. And as a result, since the flowers will die from the insecticide, no fruits can be harvested. Right? So that is why there's a decrease in produce from the garden. Also, the decrease in the number of fish. Insecticides, when you apply it to a garden, it is going to leach through the soil because soil have a lot of air spaces. And when it leaches through those air spaces, especially when rainfall, well, then the leach is occurring even faster. That will eventually reach the rivers. So when it flows, when the insecticide flows into the river, then it will poison the fish. All right, so even though you apply insecticide to gardens, it will eventually reach any kind of waterway because of that airspace in the soil itself. So it could have these two. Any other answers? You may have worded differently than me. Now, just bear in mind, you don't have to go and rush anything. I just want to show you, when I send this PowerPoint to you, and you just look at the notes below, you would see that I have the answers here. All right, so you could always take down if you don't have, but these are simple. These topics here are simple so far. Right, any questions with health and sanitation? Right, the only thing we didn't touch on in a question format would be like food preservation. So look out for something, how they is prepare, how they is preserve foods, what are some waste management strategies. So you have composting the heap, you have incineration, which is to burn it, and then you have the landfill sites. So the landfill sites is the ones, like for instance, you have three in Trinidad, you have the one in Beetham, Claxon Bay, and Aripo. So those are areas that they designate to manage solid waste. And with solid waste management, you have to employ the 3 R's, which is recycle, reduce, and reuse. Before you throw away those, you implement the 3 R's. And when those trucks, when the garbage truck takes the waste, they will also have, not in Trinidad, but they also have like a sorting, they sort through what is glass and these kind of things. And then eventually some companies will come for the glass, some will come for plastic, and then they will have the compaction. So those large excavators, they will basically squeeze the waste, make it compact so that it doesn't take up as much space as possible. All right, and then it is buried and so on. So that is basically the waste management. All right, so the next topic is electricity and lighting, but we will pause for a short break, a 15-minute break, and then we'll return to this part here. All right, so you could go ahead and take your eyes off the screen, and when we return, we will look at these areas and work on a past paper question. Is that clear, everyone? Very, very quiet. All right, great. Okay, so we are going to resume the class. What you could probably do is use your raise hand feature, so I know that you're hearing and you're seeing. You're back from the break, right? So use your raise hand feature to show that you are here. All right, great. So let's continue with electricity and lighting. Gabriella, I notice you're logging a bit late. And who else is here?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay, so let's continue with electricity. Right, now this topic has a lot of subtopics, a lot of things to learn. Firstly, you have some formulas, you have the fire hazards, you have to learn what's conductors. Now, a conductor is a material that can allow the electric charges to pass. So that could be like any kind of metal. Then you have your insulators. Insulators do not allow electric charges to travel. So that is what you would use when you're wiring. So you would use like copper wires, you would use some kind of metal, all right? And then you will wrap it now with plastic or rubber to insulate it. And you have different kinds of conductors. You have good, semi-good, you have poor conductors as well. In terms of the hazards, now that is just to basically read through the different first aid hazards and fires. So hazards caused by careless handling of appliances. So of course, if you're basically plugging in an item, appliance, make sure your hands are dry. Water is a conductor of electricity, so you don't want to have anything, any medium that is wet being inserted into any kind of socket. Now you have radiation, voltage, you have your protective, your PPE, your protective equipment and gear, as well as wear. So you have to, if you are working with something that is electrical, you have to make sure you have on insulating gloves, you have your goggles, you have, well, depending on, you have masks, if you're in a fire, if you're exposed to smoke, you have the gas mask, you have helmets, you have chest masks. And then, well, in your first aid kit, you must have like ointments, bandages to prevent burns, to prevent electric shock. And also you must know the resuscitation process, the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, in the event someone is unconscious. The different kinds of fire extinguishers, you have the chemical, you have the water-based ones, you have the carbon dioxide fire extinguishers. Basically, you have to know what is the three requirements for a fire, which is oxygen, fuel, all right, and some kind of incinerator. So once you could diminish those, then you could extinguish a fire. In terms of the bulbs, you have to know your fluorescent bulb. This is the energy efficient or energy saver. Also your LEDs, right? And then, well, the filament is like the regular bulbs, the old-time bulbs, the yellow ones. You have to know how your shadow is formed, the brightness, the energy conservation, that will be the law. Energy is converted from one form to the next. It is neither created nor destroyed, right? You have to learn ways like, for instance, how to conserve energy by turning off lights, by using, opening the windows instead of using your AC units. Also for faulty equipment, you have to make sure and replace it because sometimes it could cause fire hazards or electric fires. You have your LED, LCD, and plasma screens for the energy consumption. This is also calculation. You have to know how to calculate the electricity bill You have to know the different kinds of meters. So you have your, basically you have the analog meters, which they don't bring the analog. They usually bring like the digital, and you have to know how to, they bring the analog, they don't bring the digital, sorry. And you have to know how to read it. All right, so that's like the ones with the clock face. You have to know how to add in your fuel adjustment charges as well to electricity bill. So we will look at some questions pertaining to the bill. In terms of the fuse, that is basically a safety device. So a fuse is used in appliances. It's basically to melt the wire to prevent any kind of hazard. It also, in the wiring, you tend to have a lot of surges of electricity. And if you have too high of a surge, it will kind of break that unit to prevent any kind of hazard. So yeah, you must know to wire plug. You must know the dangers of overloading when you're overloading a wire. The formula. Now this formula you could remember as VIR. Voltage is equal to current multiplied by resistance. And you must know how to rearrange the formula if you have to find for resistance or current. When you're making something the subject of the formula and you carry it across the equal sign, you're just doing the opposite. So the opposite of multiply here would be divide. Right? So you could just remember the base formula there and remember how to interchange to get the other variables. Electricity is measured in watts. So, well, you have amps, that's for current. You have volts for voltage. Ohms is the unit for resistance. Make sure you learn the symbols as well, right? The symbol for voltage. You have to know the switch, the lamp, the amp, or the amp meter. You have to know how to do a parallel series, how to illustrate a regular series circuit unit. So here are the symbols. You have to learn what's the fuse symbol, transformer as well. All right, and the cell, the battery and the cell. So this is a good bit of information, and you have to be prepared for if there's a calculation. When you're doing the calculation, always show you your formula first. There's also this formula to learn, PIV. That is how I remember it. So to calculate for fuses and flexes, you have, now if you rearrange the formula, you could get PIV. Power is equal to current multiplied by voltage. And if you have to find for whatever unit there, you just make it the subject of the formula. Like in this case, it's very tiny, but if you have to find current, then it will be power over voltage. All right, so power is in watts, volts at voltmeter, volts is in, well, they will give you the symbol V for volts. Anytime you see I, remember that is current, which is measured in amps. So if something is 5A, you know that is current. All right, so let's look at a question. So it always starts off like distinguishing terms, defining something. Now this is important. Your 3-pin plug with your live wire, earth wire, neutral wire. You have to know the color of the wires, and you have to know what they each connect to. So this is one way they could bring this 3-pin plug. And then for the electricity bill, sometimes they will give you, well, first they could give you like different appliances, the reading in watts. You have to convert it into kilowatts. Then you have to find out the amount of electricity consumed per day. So you have to multiply. Now this particular paper, you could have a calculator. I will verify because below the timetable, the CXC timetable, they do indicate which subjects you are required to have a calculator. All right, but the symbols, the actual figures is not difficult to work with. So go through this question and we will correct it. I'll give you about 10 minutes for this one, seeing that it have some calculations. And then there's, in between, there's little structured questions. You just put in the answer here. No need to rewrite any questions. All right, so I'll give you about 10 minutes to work on. question 4. Everybody able to see the question? Right, Isilia, your hand is up. Do you have any questions?
No, miss.
Okay. All right, welcome, Sharda. I noticed that you just logged in. All right, did your other class finish or is it a break?
No, miss, I was here before, but my electricity had went and it just came back.
Okay, well, in the event any of you need the recording, you could just message me. It will take like a few, let's say like an hour after the class for it to really process. So you can always message me if you need the link for the video. Right, and we will go through this question shortly. All right, let's look at this question very quickly. Wherever you reach, you could always tell me what you get if you have something different and you want to check it. So for question 4, basically you have to distinguish between a conductor and an insulator. All right, so let me ask someone. Let me see who I can ask. Giovanni?
I had a conductor allows the free flow of electric charges to pass through a material, whereas an insulator does not allow the flow of electric currents to pass through a material.
Very good. So conduction is to allow electrons to pass freely through a material. Insulator do not allow the free movement of electrons through a material. Part B. State one example of how a conductor is used in the kitchen and one example of how an insulator is used in the kitchen. So this is an everyday life example. So basically for the conductor in the kitchen, you can talk about the pots, right? You can talk about the utensils. Now make sure you explain it thoroughly. So this is state one example, and so when you're stating it, you could say the metal pots, right, are used because the material allows heat energy. Well, I put a little more into the answer. For stating, you just have to state the answer. So you could just put metal pots. For the insulator, you could put like a pot cover, like the plastic pot cover, be very specific because sometimes some pot covers are not insulated. So you could say like plastic, you could say like a wooden spoon. All right. Any other answers that you all came up with?
Miss Kitchen Mittens.
The mittens, yes. The kitchen gloves, mittens, oven
For
mittens.
conductor, I also put stove.
Stove. Why stove?
I didn't know what to put to answer this.
Remember, you
So
have
I
your
put-
gas stove. Yeah, there's
Oh.
the electric stove.
Be specific.
Yeah. Next one. C. In a practical activity, Ryan was asked to connect 3 wires to the live, earth, and neutral contacts in a 3-pin plug. Complete table 4 to show the colors of the wire that should be connected to each contact. So a 3-pin plug are those heavier kind of appliances like your microwave, your refrigerator, your treadmill. A lot of them have those. All right, so the color for live will be brown. The color for earth will be green. Now, earth could also be green or it could have yellow and green, like stripes, yellow and green. Right, there's only exception. And neutral will be blue. All right, so remember those colors. The working now. A housewife wants to determine the weekly cost of using 3 appliances in her home. If 1 unit of electricity, which is kilowatts hour, costs 25 cents, calculate the cost when she uses the appliance. So this is the actual cost of 1 unit. So in order to find out all units, you have to multiply for the day, get the total, and then find out for the week and the total. So the first thing, you must look at the headings. So they have appliance, they have the ratings in watts. You have to convert to kilowatt. Then you have to put the units of electricity consumed. If by chance you don't know what's the formula, you always look at the units. So you're seeing kilowatt hour. So you know you have to multiply this row, this column, kilowatt by hour. All right, and don't go and change hour into minute. Then if they didn't ask you to do it, you just leave it as hours. So you always stick to what the formula is showing, the units of the heading. So for stove, now to convert watts into kilowatt, you divide by 1,000. So 1 kilowatt is equal to 1,000 watts. So for the stove will be 1.5, the washing machine will be 1, and try to have it in the same decimal points, so for 1.0. Then for the fan, it will be 0.25. All right, and in terms of units of electricity, you multiply 1.5 by 5, you get 7.5. There is no need to keep writing kilowatt hour because it's already in the heading. Right, this one will be 2 kilowatt, then 2.5. Now when you add up everything, $7.5 plus 2 plus 2.5, what is the total you all got? $12, right? 12. Very good. Now to find for 1 week, now this is per day. When you get the total here, that is for 1 day. So for the week, you multiply by 7. So it'll be 12 multiplied by 7 and you get 84 kilowatt. That is for 1 week. And then the total weekly cost, so they said that 1 unit is 25 cents. So if you have 84 for the week, 84 by 25 cents, which is 0.25, what will be the total weekly cost?
84.
The cost. Total weekly cost.
$21.
21.
$21, right? I hope everyone got that. Sometimes if they're asking, like they add in additional charges like a rental fee, this other fee they just have fuel adjustment charges, right? The rental, look out for those things if you have to add in those charges to the bill. All right, next one. And sometimes it will give you for the month, right? So when you have to find out the amount of electricity consumed for a month, they normally will give you a meter reading. So they will give you like the 1st of May meter reading to the last day of the month, and to find out how much energy was used, you'll have to minus those two to get how much electricity consumed for the month. So look out for that one. Any questions with this past paper? I forgot E. All right. State 2 ways in which energy can be conserved in the home. So when you look at the appliances, you could kind of come up with some answers, like for instance, to switch off the fan, open the window. You could say turn off TV when not watching. The bulbs, limit the amount of light bulbs on in the night, or you could use like those LED bulbs. So there are various answers here. All right. Conservation of energy. So these two topics are very close. They could kind of combine these two. You also have a formula to learn in this one. Now, conservation of energy, you have to learn the different forms of energy. So light energy, wind, you have nuclear energy, all the different types. You'll be able to kind of define them. Energy, the means in which they are transported or transferred. So you have the wave method, energy reflected and brought into focus, and then you have vehicular collisions. Now, this will tie in when you're looking at momentum, principles of momentum conservation. The formula you have to learn is P, which is momentum, is equal to mass times velocity. All right. Right. So there are some laws you have to look at where total momentum before collision equals total momentum after collision. That's a law you will also look at when you're implementing the formula. So we'll just jump into our question just to see how it comes. So sometimes it always starts off with definitions, given forms of energy, how energy is transferred, so the interconversion and energy of mass energy. Energy can be interconverted, stored, put into motion, or used to do work. So you have to know the transition, how energy is converted to one form to the next based on a particular scenario. So you must know the different forms, and looking at a picture, you should be able to identify which form is being converted. So this one starts off with definition. Then you have some conversions to look at. When you're doing the conversions, put an arrow. So if you're trying to say like light energy is being converted into heat energy, you just put an arrow between the conversions. Right? It is understood that that is what the energy is being converted into. Right? So go ahead and work on this one and we'll correct it. Okay, can we correct? Anyone still working on the question? This one is shorter, all right? So this is, again, our next example of the short answer kind of questions. So 2A part 1, define the term energy. How did you define the term, Cherise?
Energy is the ability to work.
Very good. So very simple as that. Energy is the ability to do work. I have energy is required to perform an action in order to carry out a particular job. All right, name 2 forms of energy so you can have a variety of answers. So I just basically put kinetic energy and potential energy. Right, you could have gravitational energy, heat energy, sound energy. Those are forms. Part B. Figure 1 shows 3 diagrams, A, B, and C, of activities in which energy is being converted from one form to another. So examine figure 1 and say the energy conversions taking place in each diagram. So this person is in a seesaw. So what energy is being converted?
Miss, I say gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy.
Very good. Gravitational potential. So the ability for this seesaw to move downwards, right? The force that an object is pulled to the ground is gravity. And then you have, well, kinetic, which is energy of movement taking place. Then B is seeing a match that is being lit. So in order for this match to be lit, you need to move it. So you need to strike it. So that is movement. That is kinetic, which will create chemical energy because that tip there is going to basically ignite. There is a chemical reaction. And then you're going to have light energy because of that fire. And then it's going to give off heat energy. All right, some people has put heat before light. But that should not matter because it's basically going to be the same. Light is produced and then heat, or heat is being produced from the fire, and then you have light. So you shouldn't lose any mark there. Right? Anybody had something different? Some people perhaps might start off with potential, like the ability for this match to possess energy. So you could even start off with potential energy before kinetic. Right, the person now playing the guitar. See, who wants to do it?
Kinetic. The sound.
Kinetic, and then you have sound energy. So the movement of the string producing sound. Very good. Part D, state the forms of energy present before and okay, so say the forms of energy present before, during, and after trolley collides with a stationary toy truck. So before the trolley collides, which means to hit stationary, basically the toy truck is just still motionless. So if you have a trolley now, before, you're going to have now what are you going to have? What type of energy? What form of energy?
Miss, kinetic energy.
That's before it starts to move. That's even before that.
Potential.
Potential, right? Potential energy. During, so while it's actually moving now, then you put kinetic.
And
You
you could also
understand?
put sound.
Yes, because sometimes you tend to hear like the wheels, that sound being produced, sound energy. right? And then after the trolley collides with the stationary truck, now you will hear a bang, so you will hear sound energy, and then it will move. The stationary truck will then move. So then you will have kinetic as well. So sound as well as kinetic for after, right? Part E. The toy truck possesses gravitational potential energy. Explain where this energy comes from. So how are you explaining that?
Miss, I say gravitational potential energy comes from gravity being exerted onto an object that is not grounded to the surface of the earth.
All right. So you can have the earth. So the energy comes from the earth's surface. On earth, there's gravitational energy. So anything that has a mass, so the toy truck will have like a mass. Any object that possesses mass will be drawn towards the earth's surface. There's a non-contact type of force that exists in earth. Right, so this wasn't too bad here. We will do one more topic. I think we can actually do two more topics. So we'll move on to the metals and the non-metals. So for the metals, again, you have to know types of metals. So like aluminum is important to learn. You have to know the uses of aluminum. The reactivity of metals. This is something you should learn like a song or acronym to know the order, the ones that are most reactive and the ones that are least reactive. So you have like a series of metals in a particular order that you should have. I will post it up as well in case you don't. You have to learn how rusting is formed. So you have basically that's iron oxide that forms rust, and the conditions that are necessary will be oxygen and well water. How to prevent it? So like oiling surfaces, some kind of lubrication, also keeping it away from moisture. So you could have like an airtight seal. You could just simply close windows. You could use rust. You could use a paint that will prevent rust from forming. Right? There are various methods. The structure of the metals, the physical properties, the uses of it. Alloys is when you have a combination of different types of metals. Like for instance, you have, what is an example of an alloy?
Zinc and copper
Bronze.
alloy galvanized.
I hear two people. So remember, you have bronze. Bronze is an alloy. And what is bronze made up of?
This is 90% copper and I think it's steel or iron.
Copper and iron, yes, mostly copper. Right? You don't have to know the percentage or anything like that. Right, the properties of the non-metals, paying attention to your plastics, right? Your PVC, why you use plastics, remember, is an insulator, those kind of things. So this is a little past paper question. Now this is a question 6, so this will be like an extended response. Now it always start off like 2 marks, 2 marks, and then like the last set of questions you will see like it's 4 marks, sometimes 5 marks. So you just be a little careful with how you're explaining. Right, so go ahead and complete question 6 and we will correct it. Normally for these kinds of questions, it will be like 15 minutes for extended response. Okay, let's correct. So very quickly. Now, I shared with you the reactivity series and a way to remember it on the Google Classroom. So you just have to remember, please stop calling me a careless zebra. Instead, try learning how copper saves gold. And what you would know, the A is aluminum. And aluminum is very high in the series, so that will be the most reactive. So in terms of comparing the reaction of the following metals with dilute sulfuric acid, you want to use the word reacts vigorously. Iron, however, is very low in the series, so you're going to put reacts slowly. Copper, however, do not react with acids. So there are some metals that react with acid, some that react with water, right? So that table should help you. Part B. Suggest 2 precautions that should be taken when carrying out the reaction of aluminum with sulfuric acid. Give a reason for each precaution. So when you give your actual precaution, you want to make sure, don't forget to explain what is the reason for that precaution. So if you have mentioned to wear goggles, goggles is to prevent the acid. Now remember, because of the effervescence, you're going to have like fumes. So you want to prevent any acid from going into the eyes because that could cause burning. Also, you want to perform the experiment in a fume hood. Since it's a very vigorous type of reaction and because of the fumes, once it is contained in a fume hood, it will avoid the fumes or the effervescence from escaping into the room. All right, so that could actually interfere, that could cause respiratory diseases. Some people with asthma can trigger their asthma. So the 2 precautions, wear goggles, perform the experiment in a fume hood. Is there any precaution that you all mentioned as well?
Wear a lab coat.
Wear a lab coat. So proper protective equipment and gear, PPE, gloves, right? Okay. See, why
also had to wear a mask to avoid inhaling any of the powder.
A gas mask. You have to use the word gas mask, okay? Because when you hear mask, you might think it's just a regular cotton mask. Right. C. Why is it dangerous to react sodium and potassium with dilute sulfuric acid? So the word dilute means it's pure, right? It's a very concentrated form of sulfuric acid. Now, because sodium and potassium are very reactive metals, they are very high in the reactivity series, they are going to react explosively with sulfuric acid. So because of the highly reactive nature of these metals, and because it is a dilute acid, right, it's going to have explosions. So that is why it is dangerous, and also because it involves a large amount of heat. A large amount of heat is being produced from the reaction. So it could cause a burn, it could cause fire, and it could cause an explosion. So that's important. Last one. The Smith family moved into a new house which is very close to the beach. The contractor advised that in order to protect the iron windows, Mr. Smith should paint them as soon as possible. Why did the contractor give this advice to the Smith family? What is it going to avoid? So people who live in close to the beach, you notice like their window panes, you're seeing a lot of like a kind of brownish formation, which is rust. You have to say because of the high levels, now sodium chloride is salt. And once you're living close to the beach, that salt will also be in the air itself. And that tends to increase rusting. So due to the high level of sodium chloride in the air from the seawater, you're going to have more rusting occurring or faster rusting. that can occur. Now, when the sodium chloride dissolves in the moisture, it speeds it up. So when you paint the window panes with a kind of rust coating kind of paint, that will kind of form a little barrier. So iron and steel fixtures in homes located near the sea rust at a faster rate than normal. So it's important for them to use some kind of barrier so that it doesn't react with the metal. The moisture together with the sodium chloride should not react with the metal. Anyone would like to read their answer there? Right, I believe we could do one more topic, which is terrestrial environment. Now, just to show you, there are some things that I add on to your Google Classroom that you could always review to help you. So when you refresh the page, you would see I added in the food preservation techniques, the types of disease-causing microorganisms, right? Bacteria, virus, fungus, protozoa, the mode of action, so how they actually enter your body and what occurs, how is it transmitted, if it's by the air, through water, through touching an animal, which is zoonosis, the disadvantages of the microorganisms, and there are advantages of using microorganisms in foods, like for instance, dairy products and cheese, bread making. Here is the food preservation technique. So you can break it down into the physical methods like filtration, heat treatment, drying, radiation. The chemical methods is using some kind of preservative or brine solution, which is salt water, acid. Principles of food preservation. The reason why you preserve food is either to prevent microbes and preserve food, to remove all microorganisms, to inhibit the growth of microorganisms, kill them, or deactivate their enzymes. So this is something you could go through. When you scroll down, you would see something with forms of energy. So the different forms, a little about it, right? Like thermal energy, energy of moving particles, heat. Mechanical is energy of objects in motion, right? So then you have your electric symbol, which you should know. So this is your cell, your battery. Now, it's important to learn your switch. When the switch is on, the wires will be straight. So there won't be any kind of little kink. You know, once the wires are connected, then the electric charge could flow. If it is off, then it will look like this. The wire is not connected. Right. Electric bulb, resistance, rheostat, ammeter, voltmeter. Those are important. You really have to know plug key, right? And reactivity of the metal. So this is the order that you all have to learn. And this is a little acronym to remember it. All right, so let's move on to the next topic very quickly. And then we will take a lunch break. Right, so terrestrial environment is a very large topic. This has to do with land. So with this topic, you have to know your weather patterns. You have to know, well, your environmental disasters, like your cyclonic storms. You have to know hurricane. You have to know what is tidal waves, how the waves are formed, your different seasons, your weather pattern, like cold front, warm front, stationary front, air masses, right? That will be your different cold fronts and so on. Volcanic dust, industrial waste, Sahara dust, landfill fumes. Those are carried by the wind. Then you have to learn, well, your soil. Soil is important. The types, sand, loam, clay, your soil profile, drainage of the soil, how water is basically draining through the soil particles. The soil fertility, like for instance, the pH of the soil, the composition of humus, what humus contains, what is the importance of having like earthworms and bacteria in the soil, or the decomposers in other words. Discuss the factors that influence the soil formation. So you have the physical and the chemical weathering, which forms soil. Then you have biological action. Those three is methods in which soil is formed. Right? Then you have to learn the causes of soil erosion and prevention. Causes of volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, underwater landslides, right? The relationship between the earthquake and the volcano. So it's a lot. There's a lot of things in this topic. Now this part is simple. We'll just run through the food chains, and the food web tend to come with terrestrial as well because it pertains to the environment. Take a look at this question for now. We'll go through it. Right, jot down your answers quickly. Okay, so to answer this one, the first one, figure 2 shows a terrestrial food chain. Remember, the arrowhead points the feeder. A food chain always begins with a producer, which is a plant. A, part 1, state 2 similarities in structure between a typical cell in the grass and a typical cell in the rabbit. Now, in this question, you could see cells and they're joined with terrestrial environment. So for cells, remember a grass is a plant. So, and the cell in the rabbit is an animal cell. So any two similarities that you would have learned would be like they both contain a nucleus, they both have a cell membrane, they have cytoplasm. Those are the answers you want to put here. Part 2, state 2 differences in structure between the cell in the grass and the rabbit. So you have to make sure and say the grass is going to contain chloroplast, and the cell in the rabbit do not contain chloroplast. Also, the vacuole in the cell in the grass is large and permanent, whereas in the rabbit, it is small and numerous. You could also go into the cell wall. Cell wall is present in the grass. There is no cell wall in the rabbit. All right, any other answers? Right, go on to part B very quickly again. All right, so to identify the producer in figure 2, remember it was the grass. Give a reason for your answer because it begins the food chain, right? And you could also say that grass is the only organism that can change light energy into chemical energy. Part 3, what is the likely effect on the food chain if a drought kills all the grass in that area? Now remember, since the plants are the only organisms that can perform photosynthesis, then if you remove all producers or all plants, then there will not be any food to even start a food chain. All the other consumers will eventually die. All right, and if they die, remember they don't have something to start off the food chain. They don't have that primary meal which the herbivores would depend on. And if herbivores were to die, then carnivores will die, and so on, the omnivores. So that will be the effect. So I also included some things. Now I would like you, when you're doing your independent studies, take some time and actually go through these concise notes that I just posted. I will show you now. If you keep refreshing the page as the day goes on, I will be updating it, right? Because I want to post as many topics, pretty broad paper as possible. So there are things that you should be rewriting so that it sticks. So for instance, like the types of fronts. This will be under the terrestrial environment. You have a cold front, warm front, stationary front, occluded front. The symbols is something you never know could come in multiple choice. The definitions, of course, are important in the paper too. The types of air masses. So you have your polar maritime air mass, returning polar, tropical maritime, tropical continental air mass. You have to know where it's from, what type of air mass, hot, dry air, those kind of things, what kind of weather it forms as well. So take some time, you don't have to write it, you don't have to print it, but write it out, write out the definitions and draw over the symbol if need be. All right, this is not just to look at and read from a screen. This is concise and very straight to the point. The different kinds of weathering. So this is how the soil is formed. You have physical, chemical, and biological weathering. So look at the differences. So take the time and go through this Google Classroom and try to take down as many as you can. Focus on a particular topic. If it's terrestrial, well, they have these terrestrial kinds of topics here. Then if it's electricity, you have the symbols to learn. All right, so what we are going to do, well, we will basically pause now. We will return at 1 o'clock. When we return, we basically have water and the aquatic environment to finish. Fossil fuels, we have 2 topics, and then we are going to start now the most recent paper 2 that I have. I will pull out the broad topics that are coming. We will practice those recent past paper, and then we will jump into the multiple choice practice. All right, is there any questions? There is no need to remain on the meeting. Give your devices, make sure it's charging. You can come back at 1. You don't have to remain logged on. All right, so that's it for now. I will see you all at 1 o'clock.
I must enjoy your lunch, miss.
You too. Make sure you get a good lunch.
Miss, we're using back the same link to join back after lunch, right?
Same link, yes.